Happiness depends not on what you have nor what you lack, but on a daily decision. This is the story a 95-year-old grandfather Elias told his desperate grandson Ethan, and it transformed him forever. Stay, because it's no ordinary tale. It's the best-kept secret to being happy no matter what. Once upon a time, in a small town surrounded by mountains, lived a young man. That young man was not happy. His heart was restless, dissatisfied, as if something was always missing. He worried too much about the future. He feared not being able to support his family and constantly complained about the scarcity that struck his table. Walking through the town, he saw others prosper better than him, and the comparison filled him with bitterness. He felt he worked hard, but that life gave him nothing back. While some enjoyed laughter and peace, he carried the heavy feeling of being trapped in a dull existence, watching happiness pass by without ever stopping for him. In that same town, but in a more isolated neighborhood, lived his grandfather, an elderly man of 95 who spent his days in a simple house, surrounded by silence. The young man had known him his whole life. He had seen him lose his wife, face illnesses, and live through so many hardships, yet he never heard him complain. He always saw him serene, with an inner peace that seemed unbreakable. One day, overwhelmed by sadness, the young man decided to visit his grandfather Elias. When he arrived, he found him sitting in the yard looking at the sky like someone contemplating an old friend. "Grandfather," said the young man with a broken voice, "I've seen you face so many trials in life, even losing grandmother, and I've never seen you complain. You always keep calm, you always seem happy. I don't understand how you do it. I have a family, I have good things, but I'm not happy. How do you manage it?" His grandfather looked at him sweetly and smiled as if he had been waiting for that question his whole life. "My son," he said in a paused voice, "some days are good and others are bad, but I learned that happiness does not come from what happens outside, but from what we keep inside ourselves." His grandson looked at him with the eyes of a child seeking answers. "And how can I achieve that?" The grandfather closed his eyes for an instant and then said, "I will tell you a story. A story that my own grandfather told me when I was much younger than you. Those words marked my life forever and made me understand what true happiness really means." The young man, moved by his grandfather's words, sat down beside him in silence, ready to listen carefully to that story that was about to mark his heart. The old man looked him steadily in the eyes, took a breath with serenity, and said in a low but firm voice, "Pay attention to my words, my son, because within this story lies a secret that my grandfather taught me. Once upon a time there was a young lion who belonged to a beautiful pride. There he had everything a lion could wish for, abundant food, company, and protection. But deep in his heart, he was not happy. He always felt something was missing, as if his life lacked meaning. He constantly complained about what he had and what he did not have. He said the meat he hunted was never enough or not as tasty as he desired. He looked at other lions from neighboring prides and thought they were stronger, faster, and more admired than he was. "Why do they achieve more than me?" he murmured bitterly. "Why does my life seem so common, so empty?" He worried too much about the future, fearing that one day everything would end. The food, the security, the company. He spent more time sighing for what he did not have than enjoying what was already before his eyes. And meanwhile the pride laughed, played, and gave thanks every day, but he remained trapped in his complaints, comparisons, and discontent. What he didn't know was that the worst was yet to come, because in the realm of lions, young males are expelled to forge their own path. Thus came the day when his own father, the old lion of the pride, called him aside. With a firm but serene voice, he told him that he could no longer remain there, and it was time to find his own way away from the group. Without further ado, the father looked at him harshly and expelled him, forcing him to leave the pride and face the savanna horizon alone. Banished, the young lion walked aimlessly, dragging his steps across the vast savanna. Every sunset found him alone, recalling with resentment the moment he was separated from his own. He complained in silence, convinced that injustice had fallen upon him. Inside him there was no learning or humility, only a growing unhappiness that consumed him, as if the exile had been a wound impossible to close. At first he believed he could handle everything. He had learned to hunt, to fight, and to survive, but soon the real problems began. He failed in many hunts. He spent entire days without eating, and his roar, once proud, became increasingly weak. He complained about his luck, blamed life, and did not give thanks. Thus lived that young lion, between loneliness, frustration, and the bitterness of feeling empty and unhappy. One morning, after days of hunger and tiredness, the lion found the opportunity to pounce on a distracted zebra. It was his stroke of luck. With the strength of his instinct, he managed to take it down, and for an instant he believed that fortune was smiling at him again. His chest swelled with joy for an instant, and he thought that at last he would have a feast worthy of a king. But he soon heard the harsh laughter of the hyenas who, attracted by the smell of blood, surrounded him shamelessly. There were many of them, and he, weakened by loneliness, could do little. Between growls and claw swipes, he barely managed to save an insignificant piece of meat, a crumb that he could barely bring to his empty stomach. As the hyenas devoured his prey amid laughter, the lion moved away, chewing that piece with fury and sadness. Every bite tasted of defeat. He complained in a low voice, wondering why life denied him what he believed he deserved. And in that bitter mixture of hunger and misfortune, his unhappiness overwhelmed him, sinking him deeper and deeper into a pit of frustration and emptiness. The next day, hunger roared louder than himself. His paws barely supported his weakened body, and his mane, once a symbol of pride, looked dull and neglected. He wandered for hours under the burning sun until, on the verge of collapse, he found what was left of an antelope's carcass. The meat was already dry, torn by other predators and covered in dust, but he had no choice. With a gesture of disgust and defeat, he plunged his jaws into that scraps. Never before in all his life as a prince of the pride had he descended to such misery. Every bite tasted of shame. Every dry fiber that he tore off with effort reminded him that he was no longer a lion of respect, but an outcast who survived on leftovers. And while he swallowed with difficulty, a bitter complaint flowed from within him. Why me? Why has life treated me with so much cruelty? The emptiness in his stomach barely diminished, but the emptiness in his heart grew even more. His unhappiness weighed on him like an implacable shadow, and every time he thought about his former place next to the pride, rage and sadness consumed him. With the weight of hunger still marking his bones, the young lion made a desperate decision: to search for a pride of his own. He walked long distances, following the scent of others of his species, with the illusion of being accepted, or at least of founding his own kingdom. Upon reaching a valley, he spotted a strong pride, led by an adult lion with an abundant mane and a fierce look, walking with firm steps. Although his spirit was tired, he approached with a roar that barely came out of his throat, trying to show courage. But the response was immediate and brutal. The leader attacked him with claws and teeth, making him retreat amidst growls. Every attempt to approach was met with violence until he was finally expelled without mercy. There was no space for him there, neither in that territory nor in that group, and so lived that young lion, wandering between trials and defeats. His mane, once a promise of royalty, was now rough, uneven, and dull. More than a prince of the savannah, he looked like a vagabond of dust and wind. Instead of being grateful for the life he still had, he consumed himself in lamentations, complaining about his luck, his loneliness, and every wound he carried. He did not understand that complaining made him more unhappy, more enslaved than exile. One night, as the moon rose silently over the savannah, the young lion let out a muffled roar that was not of strength, but of tiredness and complaint. He lay down on the dry earth, repeating in his mind the injustices of his life. The hunger, the rejection, the defeats. Every thought was another weight on his spirit. Then, a fluttering interrupted the silence. A dark raven with shiny feathers under the silvery light landed on a nearby branch. With a harsh but firm voice, it spoke to him. "Friend lion, what's wrong? You seem sad, dimmed." The lion, surprised, looked at it with disdain. He growled ironically. "And what would you know, raven? You are nothing more than a bird of ill omen. Your shadow only announces more misfortune for my life." The raven did not flinch. It observed him calmly, like one who understands more than they appear, and replied, "You are wrong, lion. I also lived that way, carrying complaints, seeing only the dark, hoping that the world would change while I myself sank. It is not life that expels you. It is you who reject it with every lament." Silence fell again, but it was no longer the same. The lion remained thoughtful, because for the first time someone confronted him without claws or teeth, only with truth, even if it hurt. The young lion, with a broken voice, asked the raven, "And how did you manage to get out of that life of pain and unhappiness?" The raven looked at him with bright eyes under the moon and replied, "I also knew hunger, loneliness, and mockery," said the raven in a grave voice. "My dark plumage was a cause for scorn. They called me a bird of ill omen and compared me to others. I lost family and friends, and in my bitterness I took refuge in complaint, believing it was my shield. But I soon discovered that this complaint only attracted more pain and sank me into endless unhappiness, until one day an old tortoise taught me what it truly means to live. Are you enjoying this story, aren't you? Comment the phrase, "God wants my happiness and guides me with love." And I want to tell you that 95.5% of those who watch our videos are not subscribed. So I ask you from the heart to subscribe to the channel to continue bringing you more stories. Also remember that at the end of this video, you will find more stories on your screen. Thank you with all my heart for belonging to this community. The lion's eyes opened with a flash of hope. "Where can I find her?" he asked with anxiety. The raven slowly flapped its wings and said in a deep voice, "If you truly want to find the tortoise, you will have to prove it. She lives in the valley of the east, beyond mountains and rivers. She does not appear before just anyone. She only allows herself to be found by those who keep humility in their heart and dare to seek with effort, even when everything seems lost. So if you still keep humility in your heart, go look for her." The lion, still weak and with a neglected mane, felt a spark ignite within him. It was not happiness yet, but it was the beginning of a path. The raven softly beat its black wings and looked at the lion with a deep calmness. "Remember this, brother of the earth," it said, with a firm but serene voice. "Life is not straightened with laments, nor is it lightened with complaints. Every wound can be a burden, or it can be a teacher. What you do with them will mark your destiny." With a final flutter, it rose towards the sky, leaving the lion alone but with a spark burning in his chest, the premonition that there was still something more to discover. At dawn, the lion got up with his body still weak, but with a determination he had never felt before. His paws trembled, his tangled mane fell over his tired eyes, but in his chest burned the decision to change. "No matter what it costs me," he told himself, "I need answers." He advanced through arid lands and rough paths where loneliness became heavier than hunger. He crossed dry fields, endured the burning sun and the dusty breeze, and although his strength was little, his will was firm. After days of walking, he climbed a small hill with effort. Upon reaching the summit, his eyes opened with astonishment. Before him stretched a majestic valley covered in a greenery that contrasted with the entire path he had traveled. The air was different, clean, and in the middle of the valley, a crystal-clear spring shone, seeming to beat with a life of its own. "Here, this must be the tortoise's valley," he murmured with a thread of voice almost incredulous. With slow steps he descended, and upon entering, he began to ask the creatures he encountered. A majestic tiger, surprised to see him, respectfully pointed out the path to the spring. Small birds fearlessly told him that a very old tortoise lived there, guardian of secrets, that she only revealed to those who were truly ready to listen. The lion, tired, but with his heart ignited, followed the directions. Every step he took towards the spring felt as if it brought him closer not only to the tortoise, but also to a truth he was looking for. The lion finally arrived at a spring he had never seen. The air was fresh, the murmur of the water seemed like an eternal song, surrounded by wildflowers that gave the feeling that life itself had decided to dwell there. Cautiously he approached. On the edge of the spring was the ancient tortoise, motionless with her eyes closed, immersed in deep meditation. Her shell, worn by time, seemed to contain the memory of the centuries. The water reflected her silhouette as if nature itself recognized her as the guardian of an ancestral secret. The lion, tired and with a broken voice, did not dare to interrupt her. He just sat in front of her, letting the silence speak for him. Minutes or perhaps hours passed, in which the only thing heard was the flow of the water and the wind among the branches. Finally, the tortoise slowly opened her eyes, and in them there was neither surprise nor fear. It was as if she already knew of his arrival. "You have walked with hunger, with thirst, and with tiredness," she said in a serene voice, not yet looking directly at him. "And yet here you are. What are you looking for, young king?" The lion lowered his gaze, feeling that the words weighed more than his wounds. "I seek to learn how to live," he replied with a thread of voice. "I am tired of complaining, of the emptiness, and of being a prisoner of myself. I want to change." The tortoise nodded, closing her eyes again like someone who hears something already known. "If you seek to change, you must first dare to look fearlessly inside yourself. Tell me then, what is happening to you, wandering lion?" she asked in a serene, paused voice, like the murmur of the water surrounding her. The lion lowered his gaze and began with a trembling voice. "I am not happy. I belong to a pride. I lost everything. Now I walk through shadows carrying guilt, anger, and memories that do not leave me in peace. I feel exiled from myself, trapped in my pride and my misfortune. I have lost faith in myself, tortoise. I walk during the day as if I carry an extinguished sun inside, and at night the complaint pursues me and does not let me sleep. Sometimes I feel that I am nothing more than a memory of what I once was." He paused, lowering his head. "That is why I have come here, because I don't know how to start over. Please, wise tortoise, tell me the secret to being happy." The tortoise listened to him in silence without interrupting, as if every word of the lion had a sacred space in the air. With a serene voice, she replied, "My son," she said in a paused voice, "what you feel is part of the journey. Many believe that being strong means never breaking, but true strength lies in accepting that we are also vulnerable. Pain has not made you less of a lion. On the contrary, it has given you a depth you did not know before." The lion looked at her with skepticism, as if he still doubted his own strength. The tortoise continued, "I want you to remember this. If there is one being in this universe who wants all beings in this world to be happy, it is the omnipotent Creator. He sowed a strength in you that you yourself do not know and is waiting for you to awaken it. Sometimes the silence of life is not emptiness, it is preparation." The tortoise closed her eyes for a few seconds and then added, "The Almighty God has placed a seed of light in you, lion. Although today you see it buried under the earth of pain, that seed is still alive. Your task is not to shield yourself in complaint, but to conquer it with patience. When you do, you will see that your roar will have meaning again, not as a cry of desperation, but as a song of purpose." The young lion lowered his head and murmured, "But how do I do it? How do I stop being a prisoner of my complaint and my unhappiness? How does one change an entire life, and how do I awaken that strength?" The tortoise slowly opened her eyes, and her voice sounded like a river flowing serenely. "Start with simple steps. First, be grateful every day for what you have, even if it seems little. The heart that is grateful becomes light. Repeat every morning and every night. Thank you, O my God, for everything you give me, be it much or little, even what I do not understand. Second, learn to silence your complaints. Every time you want to curse your luck, remember that blessing can also come out of your mouth. When you feel angry, say, "Today I choose to speak life and not curse." Third, do not walk alone in your thoughts. Pray. Talk to the Creator as you would with a friend. Tell him your sorrows because he listens and responds in the silences of the soul. Tell him in your heart, "My God, I trust in you. I know you are with me even if I don't see you." Fourth, forgive, even when it hurts. Forgiveness does not free the other. It frees you. Every time resentment touches your soul, say, "My God, I place this wound in your hands. Help me to heal and let it go." And fifth, believe in the purpose that the Creator sowed in you. You are not an accident. You are part of a greater plan. When you doubt yourself, declare, "God wants my happiness and guides me with love." The tortoise paused and then added with firmness, "Do not seek to change everything at once. God does not ask you to be perfect tomorrow. He asks you to take a different step today than you did yesterday. True change does not come with roars, but with constancy." The tortoise closed her eyelids and with a sigh of satisfaction remained silent. The lion bowed his head as a sign of respect and began the journey back to the savannah. Upon returning, something inside him was no longer the same. He began to give thanks, to pray in silence beneath the stars, and to stop complaining. Little by little his life began to transform. The young lion became strong and majestic. His mane grew dark and shiny as a sign of his maturity. With time he formed his own pride. He led with wisdom and learned that true happiness was not in roaring louder than others, but in having a heart capable of being grateful and letting go of complaint. And so the lion who once felt lost found in the wisdom of a tortoise and the guidance of the Creator the path to a fulfilling life. When his grandfather Elias finished telling him the story, the young man remained still, moved. He felt that the story his grandfather had told him had not just been a tale, but a mirror in which he saw his own life reflected. His complaints, his comparisons, his fears. Like the young lion, he too had forgotten to be grateful. He had also allowed unhappiness and complaint to feed on his laments. "So, grandfather," he said with a choked voice, "do you mean that I too can change even if I feel trapped in all this?" His grandfather smiled tenderly, resting his trembling hand on his grandson Ethan's shoulder. "Of course, my son. Happiness is not a distant goal. It is a path that you begin to walk with small steps. Give thanks, stop complaining, talk to God, forgive, believe in your purpose. Do it every day and little by little your life will change, just like the lion's." His grandson lowered his head and for the first time in a long time, a tear ran down his cheek, not of sadness, but of relief. He hugged his grandfather tightly, feeling in that embrace the peace he had sought for so long. That night, upon returning to his home, not everything had changed outside. The table was still simple, the worries were still present, but something inside him had awakened. Before sleeping, he closed his eyes, and with a low voice but full of faith, he whispered, "Thank you, oh my God, for everything I have, even what I don't understand." And that is how that young man, thanks to the story of a lion and the wisdom of his grandfather, began to discover the secret of true happiness. If you have reached the end of this video, don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Thank you for accompanying us on this emotional journey. See you in the next one.